So,
Yes.
Ella, here's what's so fantastic about having you on Full Circle is I also feel that in some part my own fashion sense has come full circle because in the very beginning I was if it's important it must be fantastic, and it was bling and it was expensive and then I hit a middle point where like no, it's not about the bling, it's about the stuff that I like. And more that refinement has led me to brands that are very, very tiny, led and owned by people who are incredibly imaginative, but also incredibly single-minded about what they want to do. So these people have never been, we want to be fashionable. This is my aesthetic, and this is what we're going to stick with.
Yes.
So I know you as magical and fab, and you always laugh a lot when I'm here. But for people who know, maybe who've seen your work, whether it's in Wanted magazine or any of these other features, how do you describe yourself? Like, who are you?
Well, I always say I make clothes. I'm more a clothes maker than a designer. I think the making part is actually the essential part of everything.
Yeah.
So I do say I'm a clothes maker more than a designer. I mean, I always think the design is not so important.
Yeah.
And me I am a creative. I think I could have done probably anything.
Yeah.
I probably could have done, I actually buy more interior magazines than what I buy fashion magazines.
Yeah.
So I think I probably could have been anything, but I am a clothes maker.
But where did your love for creativity come from? Did you grow up in a home
I think it is, I always say it's in your DNA. I feel it's in, it's who you can't almost do anything else. You're almost forced to be who you are. Yeah. So my father was, he's Dutch, and he was a builder.
Yes.
And there's the cat. And then my mother was, she was like a housewife.
Yes.
Yeah. But she also did all these funny craft things, like woodwork and stuff, to keep herself busy.
So that's where your
I
love
would say,
came from.
yeah. I'm also since young. I think I'm a very aware person. So you are more, I think creativity comes by being more aware and seeing more and feeling more and Yeah.
And did you grow up in a community that was supportive of your alternative thinking?
Not really. I think I grew up very conservative, but I think also I always believe that barriers, it's good to have boundaries. So, because then you know which boundaries to break and stuff. I think I've also met people that grew up very free.
Yes.
And they almost didn't know where to place themselves in the world. So I actually always didn't mind being, my parents were concerned, you almost had to be dead before you didn't go to school or church.
Wow.
So you always had to
So you couldn't fake you were ill, no.
Yeah, it was really, so we were very, there was, we always, and I really believe that it's good, that conservativeness. But luckily, in the other sense, our house was quite liberal. I mean, there was probably I didn't grow up like in a racist home.
Yes.
My parents, although they were conservative, we were always taught that all people were equal. Like there was no that kind of thing. That I always thought, growing up Afrikaans, you could easily have had that.
Yes.
That very conservative thing and... so I feel I'm always lucky about that, and even emotional, as you can see.
Yeah, but it's incredibly. I think the magic of coming from a community where it would have been so easy to veer off to the other end, and for your parents to pick a different path is part of your secret sauce.
Yes. Because my father was Dutch. So I mean, even in a church there was so much conservative because we grew up in the Free Sisters Church, the Dopperkerk.
Yes.
And I mean that dop, they were aliens.
Dop in Afrikaans is dop.
No, Dopper. It was the
That's how much Afrikaans I
gereformeerde kerk. And it was actually even more conservative than the enriched.
Okay.
So it was really, I mean, one of the dominees was actually like a, KP, like Conservative Party. In those days it was like, and my parents refused to do lots of things because of their viewpoint, the church viewpoint. They just said, no, we're not going to get to be part of that.
That is so incredible. I mean, speaking of churches, my mother, I remember that we were raised Catholic, right? And then my mother got divorced. And the Catholic Church doesn't give communion to divorced women. Can you believe it? So she said, F off. I'm head of church. I think now she's method. I mean, she'd kill me that I don't know what church she goes to. That tells you how much I know about
most of us are not going to church anymore.
No, but like after 12 years of school and just church on Sunday, church on Friday, I just think I've over-resourced on church, so that's not going to happen for a while.
I think I've done my bit. Because I almost going against my parents. I was in this happy clappy churches when in my early 20s.
Yes.
And that was almost being radical.
Yes.
And then, so I was baptized as a baby and I was baptized as an adult. So I really think I'm sort of covered.
When people are praying, you're like, I'm fine, I'm kind of covered.
Okay.
So, but was choosing a new church one of the first barriers you broke?
Oh no! I started dressing weird and stuff already in my teens. And I started making clothes. I mean, it was in the 80s, and I liked like a guy called Steve Strange that was connected with Vivienne Westwood.
Okay.
And
Vivienne Westwood, we know.
I probably bought magazines already that was British, and I started making clothes. And I went to, there was only I think one disco in town. That my mother actually even sometimes dropped me at.
Oh, what? We love cool mothers. We love cool mothers.
So it was really, so I think from like 13 years old, I started making
describe
stuff.
Weird. You said you were dressing weird.
I just wore these simple shifts.
Yes.
Like I think the 80s was also very primary. So it was like all red or yellow.
Yes.
Or
But also that was Jane Fonda and her
I had a dress
things.
where I wrote a lot of sayings on, and I once went out with a hat that I made stiff with like sugar. So it was standing straight up like this high. And as I was dancing, it fell flat because I was sweating, and that was quite great. And then I went out barefoot and I put paint on my feet and stuff like that.
So you were very self-expressive from a very
It's like my dad once, we lied to him. We said we're going to go somewhere. And then we didn't go to the friend's house, and then he was extremely angry, and he actually hidden some of my clothes. And the only thing he said is that I must start wearing high heels.
Okay, as punishment.
Yes. That I must get my act together and start wearing me, like, I think my mother always wanted us to be very typical Afrikaans. Coiffed almost ladies, but not one of. But then she shouldn't have married a Dutch guy. She should have perhaps married a very conservative Boer somewhere. But sadly, she went out and married a Dutch guy. So I mean, none of us actually turned out the way she wanted us to turn out.
So have you ever worn high heel shoes?
I do have one that's a bit, but no. No. We always, me and Andrea from the Leopard always thinks one day when we start sitting, we'll start wearing high heels. When we don't stand all day.
That's gonna be better. But then, so clearly, making stuff for yourself started very early. Yeah. And at which point then did you decide you're going to make stuff for others?
See, I always had this dream about being a window dresser. And I don't know why, I always thought I want to be a window dresser. And I was also not academically, I just never fell into those things that you have to have good marks, and I didn't really care for that. Yeah. And so it was quite tricky, after matric, what must I do? and then I went to study a year of secretarial homemaking, which was this funny course in Kroonstad, but that didn't really. And then I decided I'm going to be a window dresser, and I came to Joburg, and there was like a short 3 months course for window dressing, which was quite weird as well.
Yes.
But I did that, and it was in the 80s where it was also all those bombs exploding all over town. So it was quite a hectic, interesting period. But then I went back to the Free State and started working for a place called, I think, City Girl or something.
Yeah.
And then after that, I started working for John Orr. But even in my work environment, I was also very odd. I think I actually never got promoted for a long period till this one guy saw my potential. And somebody immediately made me a display manager in Sandton City.
Oh, hey.
So he gave me the flagship after
hey.
I've been just this normal somebody.
Yes.
And then I entered, so somewhat cutting to the chase, a fashion design course that you had. I think I saw it in the Elle magazine.
Yeah.
And then it was like full bursary, and then I won that. But that was already in my early 30s.
Oh,
yeah.
Word.
So actually, most of my 20s I spent in Bloemfontein.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I was more odd in Bloemfontein.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this is fantastic. No,
I mean, people call me Panzula. I was always like Panzula. Wearing Birkenstocks, those, so I had like,
You've always had your own path.
Yes, I wore these Samson dangarees with Birkenstocks, and
that's the
then I changed my
look. That's the look. That's
so it
the
was
look.
like, young in my 20s.
Oh,
yeah.
But so how then do you move from window dress, fashion design to I'm now going to have my own store? Because for all the time I've known your brand, you have such a unique aesthetic. Maybe you can define that, because you made reference to Vivienne Westwood, whose own aesthetic is incredibly eclectic, right?
Yeah.
How would you define your
I always say what you do is probably set in your ancestry and also in your DNA, because I think it is to be aware of what happens, or if you do look, but I think it is a matter of perhaps what your great grandmother wore.
Okay.
That I think something in you pulls you to certain things, or make you see. For me, it's also about feeling.
Yeah.
That I think feeling has always been very important to me. How you feel in something. So for me, the feeling is almost more important than the look. That even when I'm just thinking of ideas and stuff, you almost go back into your body and you think, how will this feel?
Okay.
And even sometimes looking down at myself, it's a feeling.
So it's not the look; it's the
almost
intentionality.
Like, it's where it fits and stuff. Because I think we all, wherever we come from, we have a certain way we want to, where clothes hugs you, where they don't hug you, and so I think it's about that as well. Yeah. For me, it feels like you can see people fitting on clothes, and they immediately connect with something, or they immediately don't connect. And then I think it's something. It's not just how it looks; it is something else. Yeah.
It also has to do with how it makes you feel, the wearer feels. Because I can
That's
tell you that in your stuff there is such freedom, right? Because it is the pieces are free, which means that for most of us who are wacky, that freedom feeds into who we are and how we want to be in the world.
Because it is actually how you're standing and how you, in that moment, like I say, sometimes when I look down, I feel, okay, this feels right. And so it is, it's a tricky thing, because it's almost probably like music as well, it's just in the air that you also can't define. because you think clothes are definable, but there is like something else that's at play that that's less harder to define.
That
Yeah.
works, though, I
Yeah.
think, for people like you who are very, very exact about what
Yeah.
you create. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't think that people in fast fashion think the way that you do, though.
I think sometimes people conform, that I've known somebody that was designing in London I think she worked for H&M or Topshop. And then because you are in that environment, you train yourself to become what they want you to become.
Okay.
So I think anybody probably could do fast fashion, but I think I've never been, I don't, what's the word? I can't even find, but I don't compromise.
Yes.
Don't compromise. And everything. So I am a bit rigid in the sense of that.
But that's part of what
yeah.
we love about
Yeah.
your stuff,
Yeah.
right? Is that
Yeah.
there's no compromise and
Yes,
there's a
yes.
consistency. So
Yeah.
people will often say, how do we define a brand? And instead of giving them like this long thesis from college about a brand is a emotional or superficial thing that you keep in somebody's mind, I'm like, no. A brand is a promise made and a promise kept. Right?
Yeah.
Your brand promises freedom, authenticity,
Yes.
uniqueness, distinctiveness. This is what it promises,
Yeah.
and this is what it delivers.
Yeah.
You see?
Thanks.
And no, because you think about the
Yeah.
number of other people you know who started brands when you did. How many of them are still around?
Yeah, less.
You see? You see?
Yeah.
So who do you think is the Superella person? If you were to describe,
I
because
think it
remember
is
your
somebody-
people are incredibly
I always say
androgynous
I'm not a
as well.
dictator. I'm not a dictator.
Yeah.
So I really feel people must come in and they must find what works for them. Because I always say I don't even wear everything. So for me, it's very important that a personal style.
Yes.
I think it is definitely somebody that knows who they are, or I can show them.
Yes.
There is people that are more conservative that then, it's almost in that moment where a person walk in, is to see if you almost try to define them and see if you can help them.
In that moment.
Yeah. Because you see them walking in.
Yes.
That's why I'm saying I'm very anti-gym clothes, because that you can't, when somebody walks in with gym clothes, you got,
There's no personality. You can't just.
I don't know how to, I don't know.
Yeah.
Then you start by seeing what people are looking at.
Yeah.
And then you try to, in that moment, to see if you can help them.
Yes.
But it's also a moment where you realize, this is not, And people do surprise you. There's every now and again somebody that you think is not, and then they are.
Wow.
But then there is people that come in, they usually, when they don't connect with the stuff, would say, oh, I must bring my mother, or I must bring my friend, or my sister. I think my sister would like these things.
Oh, okay. So
you
it's not
you
for
also
me.
know. Okay. But that's also not okay.
It's like calling into a radio show and there's a
And then you
doctor
think you
on.
might just as well say,
It's okay. It's
I-
lovely stuff,
even
but
if people say, I hate this stuff, actually won't be offended.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think, we must live in a world of individuals.
Yes.
And, and it's fine to define yourself. If you're a pretty girl in pink and that's who you want to be with a frill or two, then cool.
it's
But
okay.
another thing is that I also believe in quality. I believe that clothes must become, I think, just before it falls apart.
Yes.
That's almost when clothes are.
At their most
Perfect.
beautiful. Yeah. I do also agree that I think part of the challenge, like we were saying earlier before we started recording, that the rush to have the new thing, the in-season thing, is part of what's poisoning not just the planet, but also poisoning our minds and how we're consuming stuff. Because everybody thinks, okay, what is the it bag? Because if I'm not carrying the it bag or or wearing whatever is in fashion, then I'm not
See, I think
cool.
I'm very against elitism. I'm actually more and more against elitism. I think we must really realize there's a world out there. There's people that lives on 350 rand a month, and that is real. And you have to balance yourself. I mean, my clothes is also not the cheapest, but I give you quality. And I think you can wear my stuff hopefully 10 years
Yeah,
on.
that is true. That is true.
So it is to find the balance somewhere.
Hey, kitty.
So it is a tricky thing for me. What were we talking? Oh, consumerism. I'm also very against, everybody's throwing things away. And I think what we must rather do, and that's what I'm starting to feel very serious about, is rather pack things away. Or you have to know what you've owned.
Yes.
So that's the first thing, know what you have. And then the second thing is to think what you can still use in your life before you just throw everything away. And then because a pair of shoes that you don't wear now, you might wear when you're 80.
Yes.
And instead of using a resource again, when you to buy a pair of shoes when you're 80 years old, rather keep the shoes you've got at this very moment. And that day when you need a pair, you can just go into your own wardrobe and take a pair of shoes and wear a day. I think what we must really be against is buying new. Yeah, or buy new, but buy very selectively new. And feel the resource you're using when you're buying. Yeah.
Do you know, I'm nodding because for 2 years, I think this is year 3 now, where I have bought nothing new except gym wear.
Okay.
And these pants from you because I love. No, because remember last year we just lived at home, so we wore tights. As long as my top was good looking on a Zoom call, it was absolutely fine.
Yes. But that's also what this taught us, is that we need much
less. But what I also found interesting for me is I've always loved vintage clothes.
Yeah.
So over the last 3 years, I've literally had to say to my girlfriends, before you throw your ish away, give me your black pieces. That's all. Just before you throw anything away, give me the. So I have got many girlfriends' clothes. Hey, Kitty, I've got many girlfriends' clothes in my cupboards now. Instead of going out to buy something new, because you are correct. You honestly can't wear everything you have in your cupboard.
No.
You have. I mean, we had a bend down boutique sale in October of last year. So. Bend down boutique, literally when you go to places like Nigeria, and people are just buying repurposed clothes.
Yes.
You dump it on the floor and you bend down. So that's why it's called a bend down boutique, because you're bending down to pick up some stuff. But the joy of it is you are sharing your clothes with people you care about versus throwing it out because you're trying to get whatever's supposed to be the new bag. Or
you must first use, I think, what's in your immediate space. And like I say, before you start, I mean, we do need new things. I think our minds does move on, and although the fashion is perhaps not the word, but I think we do change,
evolve.
And I think a new thing or a new fit or something can enhance you as a human.
But it can't be the driver, though. It can't be I'm acquiring it because everybody has it or everybody says I should. It should fit into your own life.
You have to do more work and really look at who you are and look deeper. And I think, for me, the worst is, if people are branding their clothes. And that the only reason if you go out and or you have to say, that, for me, branding is the worst, Sadly, people do recognize.
So they do. No, but your stuff is also branded. Remember that the absence of a logo doesn't mean that the piece is not branded. Because when somebody is wearing a Superella piece, I can see them from a mile off.
But
so you're also branding by not logofying.
But it is a tricky thing to be a maker or to keep making new things in a time where we actually shouldn't actually make anything. But sadly, I have to survive, and we all have to. So it is to try to do it the best you can.
And responsibly.
Yeah.